Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Side Draft Media. We have officially wrapped up the regular season. We've got our standings set up. We've got our playoff list ready to go. Ryan, we're going to get after it, bud. But of course, we want to shout out our sponsors, Mr. Don Tucker's custom diecast displays. He makes these for the 124 size diecast. These things came out absolutely incredible. Make sure if you want to get your hands on one to reach out to Mr. Don Tucker. We'll leave his link down in the description. Again, he can make any team, any color, anything you want, anything you're looking for your diecast collection. He'll get you taken care of. He'll get you hooked up. We also wanted to shout out Adrenaline Rush Collectibles on Facebook, their Facebook group, selling all sorts of merchandise, anywhere from hats, shirts, diecast, you name it, they got it on there. Make sure you check them out. We will take care of y'all in the description down there with his link too. Ryan, man, that was a heck of a Southern 500. Couldn't ask for a more entertaining race. You had strategy. You had guys on the playoff bubble. You had new winner opportunities. Kyle Busch chasing it down. Let's get after it, man. What do you got for me?
Well, you're absolutely right. And thank you, Don. I am still digesting this race because it was wild. So,
Absolutely.
We get, was it 2 laps into the race, and we have a huge incident that occurs that has massive playoff implications. Playoff implications. Martin Truex and Ryan Blaney get into an accident, and it ruins both of their nights. They finish last and second to last. Ryan Blaney being the one who finished last, but neither of them two could recover from the incident. And we then see Martin Truex Jr., who we thought weeks ago, Don, was good.
We thought solid. He was safe, man. We were like, Martin's good. He's got 140 on the cut line. He's good.
Man, he has been skidding and just had all the bad luck, and had it again tonight early, like right out of the chute. And we're like seeing right away at that point that he was out of the playoffs. It was just, as they ran. But as the stages broke down and went on, and, stage points were awarded and all that, we then come to find out that, Martin was safe, but boy, oh boy, did he barely get himself into the postseason, just by the skin of his teeth. Truex did get locked in, but wow. Whoa.
You want to talk about the importance of making sure that you have great races all the way across the board in the regular season. We're talking 26 races, guys. 26 races to get yourself in position in the playoffs. This is not a mess around and find out type of thing. You have to be good every single week. You have to go get stage points every single race. You have to finish well, or you're going to find yourself in position like Ross Chastain, Ty Gibbs, Martin Truex Jr., Chris Buescher, Bubba Wallace, all these guys trying to figure out how to make the playoffs. And it's just a testament to show how important each and every single last point throughout the season really is.
Yeah, I mean, Martin Truex Jr. came into this race plus 58 above the cut. We're like, okay, yeah, he's good. But, man, he had to sweat it out. And
it evaporated real quick.
Yeah, and the cut line is 16 drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series as far as who makes the playoffs. And Chris Buescher came in 21, plus 21 above the cut. Ty Gibbs plus 39. And, like we said, Truex right above them. And 2 of those 3 end up making the postseason. But, as we break down this race, it really seemed one-sided for a lot of this race. 200 plus laps led by just a dominant race by the 5 team and Kyle Larson. They just were so fast, incredibly fast tonight. So let's give a shout out to the old Hendrick boys. They showed up, and we, when we broke down this race, we called it. We said, these guys are going to show up. They're going to be tough to beat. They always are a tough out. And
not to mention Larson, the defending race winner from the Southern 500 last year too.
Yeah, exactly. Larson runs really, really well here. Like you just mentioned, defending race winner. The other guy we said was going to be a tough out was Denny Hamlin. He certainly had his name in the mix at one point, but was playing a different strategy. But it wasn't really until, with these strategies, we saw these point standings shifting, and it was just,
It was
as
exciting.
as
It was really
as
exciting.
as a spectator, it was so exciting. I mean, there was just times we're texting each other, our nerves were like, how is this going to shake out? And then,
I loved it.
yeah, this is the stuff we live for. I mean, like as a fan, somebody who is passionate about the sport of racing, you get all your teams out there fighting for those positions, and you know, and Don, if you recall, I said after we broke down the Daytona race, a new winner locking themselves into the postseason and saying it could happen again. By the way, when 32 teams line up and go racing, uh, or plus 32 guys out there, um, there's a chance every week.
Everybody's capable of taking that checker flag, my friend, every week.
And so it's just one of those things when you go into it, the unknown, right? I mean, you don't know how the race gods are going to play out, and you know let's give a quick shout out to our regular season champion, and we'll circle back around, but they faced an uphill battle and adversity in a track where, we said statistically one of Tyler's better racetracks, Tyler Reddick, we're speaking of, and he gets through to race day, felt good going into it, and then came down with the stomach flu right before the race.
I mean, literally
Yeah,
climbing into the car, and we're finding out that Reddick has not been feeling well, and it just got
right.
progressively worse as stage one went forward.
Right, and him on the radio, reporting to his spotter, his crew chief, his team. I'm not feeling good. Sick to my stomach. I'm worried. I'm worried about throat,
Being actually sick, right?
being actually sick,
Right,
and so it's just I mean, it's like what else is going to happen to these people? I mean, this is not only do they have to worry about the mechanical element, the unknown because you don't know what these other drivers are going to do on the course, but then there's the human element.
right.
Where a driver, this was Tyler Reddick's flu race. Yeah, it's irony, and we made a post about it, Don, during the race. That his team owner, Michael Jordan, notorious for the flu game.
Right.
Basketball fans out there, Bulls fans, they know.
Yep.
Michael Jordan shows up in an NBA Final Series versus the Utah Jazz. I think he puts up 32 points in that game when they didn't think he'd make it to tip off.
And he
So
looked like he was about to collapse on the floor. We know these guys are the top
right,
athletes in the world, but when you got one of the top athletes in the most pristine condition you can be in, struggling to get up and down the court, I mean, at the end of the day, we're still human, and
yeah,
it was the resilience that Tyler Reddick and that Toyota team showed today was absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely incredible that it happened to be his car owner, Michael Jordan, that went through the same thing in the '90s, having his flu issues, and to see Tyler wrap up the regular season championship under these flu conditions, couldn't be more proud to be low key fan of Tyler Reddick, and just to see him unload that well and take care of business. Good for him and that 45 team.
yeah, and wait for that team to be able to react so quickly. I was listening in on his scanner during the race when he was giving them. They went out, they found him medicine. They were putting some stuff into a water bottle that he could drink.
Right.
They were giving him things that he could, oral medicine that he can swallow. And they said they were telling him, they're like, hey, the pink ones you can chew and swallow. The
Right.
other one you have to swallow. There's a small pill, a big pill. Like they're explaining it to him, and just how quickly that they can try to execute these things. Now, I'm just going to point this out and listen. I'm taking no greatness away from Michael Jordan and what he accomplished in his career in this flu game that we reference, on the court. But Michael Jordan got a halftime, folks. Okay. The
Very
team
true.
doctors, the team doctors are able to hook him up with an IV, get fluids into this guy. Reddick had to drink his, okay? And he only had those opportunities with what was in the car.
Right.
pre-race, okay? And then what they're able to give to him in a 10-second pit stop window.
And
I mean,
then
they had to have a crew member reach in and give him these things. The medicine was in a bag. He had to fish it out. And by the way, he's wearing a helmet, so he has to struggle to try to get that stuff in. And Tyler even said the big pill on that first go around, he dropped it. So it was rolling around on the floor, and they're like, "Well, as long as you got the little one in, that was the more important one." If
right.
I had to guess, because we've all been there with battle nausea and stuff, and Zofran, and I'm just speculating. Zofran is the medicine. I think that little pill they gave him.
Yeah.
It's an excellent anti-nausea medication. So with people that get travel sickness, motion sickness, whatever, it's something that they could give to combat that. So I don't know who had it laying around, but I'm guessing that little pill was a Zofran tablet that they said you have to swallow that, and they were giving him more medication as the race went on, pumping full of fluids, and I'm sure he's going to get hooked up to an IV after he's celebrating this regular season championship, with the team.
And how exciting is that for 2311? And we won't harp on this a little bit too much more, but it really is exciting for a fourth year team to find themselves in the position that they're in with their driver, Tyler Reddick, and rattling off this 2024 regular season championship. Like you said, with Michael Jordan, he brings that mentality to this entire team. He brings that mindset of, if you want it, go out there and get it. And well, you know what? Tyler Reddick wanted it and he went out there and got it. So congratulations all the way around to that team.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's a 4-year-old team. Tyler's been with the team for 2 of those years. And look what they've been able to accomplish thus far. Now, again, this is a regular season trophy. Okay.
Job's not finished, my friend.
Yeah. There's an asterisk next to this one because there's one that, any driver who wins this regular season championship will tell you that's not the one they want.
Right.
They want to be hoisting and celebrating at the end of the race come Phoenix in November. But this is still an accomplishment. It's a mark to the consistency and how well that team has performed up to this point. And honestly, Don, even though they struggled in this race, and it wasn't, dealing with Tyler's illness on top of handling issues throughout the entire race, this was one of their worst weekends in a while, and they still had a really good outcome and finish and accomplished the goal that they set forth in this race, which was to walk away as the regular season champions. They did it by 1 point over Larson because of how this race played out at the end. And
Right.
that's what we really want to dive into now. We gave Reddick in 2311 their flowers. Now we can move on and really
Plot twist.
look at what transpired, because there's something bigger that really occurred. And we, say, what's bigger than the championship? Well, by the way, the chance to go race for one at Phoenix, that race we just talked about, wow. I mean, I called in the preview episode, one of my dark horse that I said was going to go out there and win this race. He ended up P2, finished second, was Kyle Busch, a
Right.
guy who desperately needed to win himself in. And that was the only way he was getting in. He came up runner up, it was not for a lack of effort. His last 2 weeks, he's finished second, Daytona and now here at Darlington. But, it wasn't for a lack of effort on their part. They had a fast enough car that, with race strategy and, the way things played out at the end of this race with getting tires at the right time, because tires definitely make a difference on a track like Darlington, where the tires do fall off. And they had pressure, so they were able to flip track position. And then with the cautions, the way they came out, it worked out to where they were able to go out and fight for the opportunity, to win this race and put themselves into the postseason. Ultimately, they fell short by 1 position. But again, we had a race that just seemed like it was Kyle Larson's race to lose. And
I was excited for Larson fans. They were going to get a unique diecast win. I mean, it was going to be completely different than all their other wins.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting like 6 versions of the Coca-Cola 600 car, and he didn't even run the Coke 600.
I know, man.
And we'll just address that right now. And we'll make our quick statement about that, because there are going to be the Larson and Hendrick Motorsports fans that want to throw and cast a little bit of shade on the Tyler Reddick regular season championship. And, the facts are the facts that Kyle Larson chose to run the Indy 500 and didn't get to, because whatever the circumstances were in Indy, now we know it was rain. Okay.
Right.
Out of Larson's control.
Moisture.
Well, I'm just talking about rain delaying the Indy 500 first
right.
of all.
I got you.
And then so because of that and that race running later, he didn't quite make the cutoff time to get to Charlotte in time from Indianapolis to get into the car for the 600. And then we had weather in Charlotte. So, and then because of the time of the day and the humidity that NASCAR claimed,
moisture.
They never got they never got back going. And Larson ends up not racing in that race, and he lost the regular season championship by 1 point. So, for the Larson and Hendrick fans out there, that's got to sting a little bit. But again, Larson and Hendrick made that choice. And, if it would have worked out for them, everybody would have said they were a genius, and it didn't. It backfired, and they miss it by 1 point. Now, in retrospect, though, I'm just gonna, again, I'll give the shout out where due. Larson's had an incredible season thus far.
Absolutely.
Because of the fact that he missed that race and only missed winning a regular season championship by 1 point. He's got a ton of extra playoff points to go into, which, honestly, because he got that waiver, that's where it really matters. Again, we're fighting for the big trophy here.
Right.
That's what all these guys want. And at the end of the day, Larson still has that opportunity to go hoist the trophy in Phoenix. So Larson fans, don't be upset about it. Don't throw shade. Accept it for what it is.
Right.
Larson did not win the regular season championship. Don't try to justify it, spin it, whatever. We just gave you the facts. It is what it is. Again, shout out to the 2311 crew. We're not going to take anything away from you here because we know how consistent Tyler has been as well. But yeah, Larson, incredible season. And when this points re-rack, and we'll go over that towards the end of this episode, the re-rack of the championship standings as they are now, it comes out into those guys' favor. So,
right.
Again, Larson had an incredible showing today, and it just didn't play out. Late race cautions made all the difference in this.
Absolutely.
And Don, we see that a lot in this sport, and that's what makes strategy so interesting when it comes to these races, because when you get guys on different strategies and then you throw out these cautions, it's like, well, we just got tires. Do we need tires?
Absolutely.
Or do we need the track position? And that's ultimately what guys were trying to figure out. And it's, if you think as a viewer that you could do it better, then yeah, bet. You know what I mean?
These guys I would love to see it.
Yeah, these guys get paid the big bucks for a reason, because I'm sure, we're talking about Larson. I'm sure Cliff Daniels would like the opportunity for a redo,
right.
Because he could have pit at the end of this or towards the end of this race.
He chose to stay out.
And he chose to stay out. And so you live and die by the sword. And, Cliff Daniels is a respectable person, and he'll tell you, I made this call. We stayed out. It didn't work out. Ultimately, not only did it cost him a chance at the win, but it cost him the regular season championship too, because this was back and forth so many times throughout the race. Reddick struggling with, his ill handling race car and his ill handling driver, throughout the race. And Larson just, they were just unreal today.
Larson was literally on a Sunday drive for about 95% of this race. The car was super fast. The team was absolutely flawless on pit road. Larson is the wheelman that he is. The calls from the pit box were absolutely amazing. It just felt one yellow flag too much out of their favor. And Kyle Busch definitely was the beneficiary of that, as we saw with the finishing results.
Yeah, Christopher Bell too, because again, these guys they played out the tires and track position, the gamble at the end. We know Ross Chastain stayed out at the end of this race. He's another one of those drivers that was a bubble driver, knew he needed to win. They weren't going to drive their way through him if they pit,
Right.
So we've seen the Melon before. That worked at Martinsville. That's out of the window too. You can't do that anymore. So they had to do something. When it comes down to it, at the end of these races, you have to zig sometimes when everybody else is zagging. And for what it's worth, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And Ross still finished fifth, so they salvaged the day. But they were flirting again in that top 10 throughout the day. But we never saw that raw speed out of the one like the 5 had, who finished fourth. It just didn't work out. Fresh tires prevailed. But the guy who won the race, he stayed out too, didn't he? So there was, uh, and we'll get into that because it
That's
did
really
work out. It did work out for him.
right.
But I want to break down some of the, as far as the finishing order a little bit. These late race cautions that took place, they had playoff implications as well.
Absolutely.
We had seen, a bubble driver that we have not mentioned yet in Bubba Wallace, unfortunately get caught up in another person's mess. Multiple cars getting involved in an accident. He tried everything to miss it, and it almost looked like he was going to. He lightly taps with the front end and then just gets drilled from behind.
Yeah, it looked like Noah
Again,
Gragson ran out of brakes. It looked like is what happened, and Noah comes in hot and kind of crunches in between the cars that are wrecking and Noah's cars. So, yeah, unfortunately for Bubba, he gets caught up in another person's accident. And as far as Bubba goes, he doesn't find himself in this position if he has a better first 25 races of the season. He's not
absolutely.
sitting here scripting and trying to gather every last point that he can get on the last race of the regular season if he has a few better finishes in the rest of the season. So the 23 team has a lot to be proud of this season, and they've got a lot where they've got a ton of opportunity to do better moving forward. So,
Yeah, and humbly and gracefully, he accepted that defeat at his car side post race interview.
correct.
He didn't whine about it. He was very matter of fact, straight to the point, and pretty much said what you said, Don. Just more. I don't know exactly how the words came out of his mouth, so I'm not going to try to quote him verbatim. But he owned it. He knew. And then the flip side of it, another bubble cut driver who had incident late in this race as well, with it was a racing thing, but we see the 17 of Christopher Buescher, who Chris Buescher had a good car, but unlike the spring, the RFK guys really weren't talked about much. They weren't really as much of a factor as you and I both thought coming into this race, that those Fords were going to be tough outs.
Right. If I remember
But
correctly, Chris Buescher was actually my pick to win this race. Now, obviously, I was a bit off on that, but that probably has a lot to do with the fact that they ran that race all during the daytime in the spring. And when you have a race that starts in the sunshine and ends at nighttime, your car and the track are going to change dramatically. And it just didn't look like the 17 team was fully on pace with the way the track was adjusting along with the car. So that's probably what had a lot to do with that.
yeah, and it looked like they were going to be able to race themselves above the cut line. They had done everything they could except for one thing.
Right.
That one thing that would keep them out of the playoffs. Because Christopher Buescher finished sixth. They played that tire strategy with these late race cautions, even though they were in one of them.
Right.
Didn't really hurt the handling or such of the car.
If
They
anything,
were
it
able to
helped that car.
yeah, I mean, well, because of that tire strategy, because other drivers in front of them, even though Buescher was in an accident, so to speak, they came in, looked at the vehicle, put 4 fresh Goodyears on it, sent him back out. Other cars around him, where he was scored in the running order, also came in. So the drivers that stayed out ahead of them, they capitalized. Those four tires, they definitely mattered. Now, I can't say that, like, 4 laps of difference made much of a difference, but 10 plus on those tires, absolutely you saw a difference.
Absolutely.
And Chris Buescher finished sixth on the day because of how those strategies and naturally upset posts. Did not make the postseason. You hear these drivers, and I get it. There's so much that's going on, and they do everything they can to put themselves in the right positions because of the playoff format the way it is. You are rewarded for a win into the postseason. Um, Except in, we're not going to rehash it, but except in Austin Dillon's case, because in the record book, he has scored with the win at Richmond Raceway, but NASCAR pulled that playoff eligibility that went along with that away. So he's the only driver you'll see in the win column, not in the postseason. And, it's just one of those things. The racing format, you as a driver can go win a race and win yourself into this. You as a driver can go have better finishes and be more competitive more consistently throughout the year and not have to sweat that bubble as much. And these teams ultimately deep down inside know that they'll point the finger at themselves at the end of the day internally in these meetings. And if they don't, I mean, yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, at the end of the day, who we kidding? If you didn't perform and you did perform. And
Right.
and really, when we talk about performance and how the RCR team of Dylan had a race taken playoff eligibility away from them, they were a team that really did not perform this year anyway, except for they showed up at Richmond and man, they were on their A game. They had a fast car all weekend. They
Absolutely.
ended up ultimately winning that race. The 8 team, however, was a lot better than the 3 car statistically, points wise throughout the season.
Right.
They just had a lot of bad luck, similar to Martin Truex, but they didn't have the point cushion that Martin Truex had because they weren't that good early on in the season. The 8 team is really of late had started to turn it around because they weren't getting caught up in everybody else's mess. But
And
it
what's wild about Kyle Busch, and excuse me for interrupting,
no,
he
it's
had a
okay.
chance. He had a chance at the Daytona 500 win. He was also one of the 3 cars that finished within 0.002 seconds of each other in that Atlanta race. The opportunities were there for the 8 team. Let's get that out of the way. Now they didn't help themselves as the season progressed and as they found themselves in worse positions and worse scenarios. But the
Mhm.
opportunities were there for that 8 team. So Kyle will he'll still go out there and battle these last 10 races. He's still going to try and get out there and win for his owners and his sponsors and his team. But definitely opportunities were laid down by Kyle Busch this season to get himself into the playoffs.
Absolutely. And, I just want to hash on something that you just said about, not only Kyle Busch, but, the beauty of the playoffs in our sport is that all the teams still get to show up at the track every weekend and still have a fair shot to go out and win a race.
We saw it at
Um,
Xfinity last weekend,
and,
man. A
and we,
non-playoff driver.
I mean, we saw in the championship race last year a non-championship Ford driver, the first time it's ever been done in this format, where Ross Chastain went out and won Phoenix.
Right.
Um, I mean, he won Phoenix, like he had the car to beat that day,
In front of a
and
very, very grumpy Ryan Blaney, might I add. My
yeah,
goodness.
I mean they had to calm down Blaney because they had to make sure he knew that it wasn't.
You're not racing the one, bud.
You're not racing the one exactly, and obviously you win a race, you win it, but like that's the beauty of our sport, though, Don. I
Right.
mean, in NASCAR racing, um, and unlike in other sports, when it comes playoff time, if the team that you bleed for and root for every Sunday, if it's football, or Saturday if it's college sports, or whatever may be the case, in racing, you still get to tune in whenever race day is
They're
and
still
pull for
chasing
your
trophies, man.
and pull for your driver and pull for your team, and and that's the beauty of our sport. So I, for one, am always thankful for that, because there's been years where the guys that I've supported aren't one of those championship drivers. They were that Kyle Busch type season where missed opportunities, or you can twist things however you want, but like again, it's missed opportunities and not getting it done at the end of the day. And in this format, performance matters, wins matter, and until that changes, this is what we have to work with.
Right.
This is what we have to accept as fans, as media, and but that's part of what drives the excitement in it as well, Don. So
Absolutely. Well said, my
I
friend. Absolutely.
I for one am looking forward to the playoffs. Now we haven't said his name yet, and I'm going to say that we have a new playoff driver because coming back to what I said in the preview episode, it could happen again. And Don, it happened again.
Sure enough, my friend.
And I want to say shout out to the Stewart-Haas Racing team, because this is a team that is not going to be in business next season. They're going
Right.
to have a different look. There will be the Haas factory team. We know that's piloted by Cole Custer, but it is not this group. It is, this Stewart-Haas team, whether it was the 14, the 4, the 10, they showed up, and I'm leaving the 41 out, but regardless, they and I apologize, but they show up every week to the racetrack, with the goal in mind to win a race, right? They never quit. They never quit. The 14 crew came to work this weekend in Darlington. This is one of Chase Briscoe's better racetracks. He felt good about it going into the weekend. And, they showed up. They qualified strong. They had really good long term speed as far as lap averages
Right.
for longer run race car. And that 14 car of Chase Briscoe was in the entire race in the top 10, let alone I think the top 5. I don't know if he fell out of it. I'd have to go back and rewatch, because every time I look, he was at least third or fourth.
He was in the top, at least the top 10 all day long.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
no getting around that.
Yeah, and the pit crew, by the way, they showed up, delivered excellent stuff.
They flexed on the group today.
They showed resilience all around, from driver behind the wheel to the pit crew and the crew chief on top of the pit box. So and unlike a Daytona plate race win where you need some help, and plate races can be an equal playing field, intermediate tracks are not the same. The 14 team showed up today. They drove their butts off. They parked at P1, and whoa, what a move by Briscoe on a restart, to take it 3 wide and
Beautiful.
get underneath Larson, who had dominated this race, and said, you know what? I'm not going to be denied. I'm going to do anything I can to win this race for my team and do it the right way and clean, and just drove himself to the front. And he didn't relinquish the lead after that. It was just execution at the right time of the race. They were there the entire time. So, they set themselves up perfectly for it. They chose to stay out late, and it worked. It paid off. They were able to, get their preferred lane on the restart. And, the car with fresher tires, like, when the tires equalized, Kyle Busch just unable. He would have needed a couple more laps probably to catch Briscoe, let alone pass him.
What I think happened at the end of that race was Kyle Busch used up a little bit more tire than Chase did. And so when those last few laps started to wind down, Kyle just didn't quite have enough, whereas Chase was actually able to save just a tiny bit more. Mm-hmm. He was able to save those tires just a tiny bit more for those last couple laps, was able to keep that 8 car in the rearview mirror, because Kyle was coming, man. And, Kyle made it very clear, and I'm very, very proud of Kyle Busch. And what he said during this week is he had the opportunity to turn Harrison Burton into the grass and go ahead and take that victory, get himself into the playoffs. But I feel like as Kyle gets older and gets more towards the end of his career, he understands the eyes that are on him. He's got a very, very quick racer of a son in Braxton Busch that is watching what his dad does every weekend. And the last thing Kyle Busch wants to do for Braxton and his friends, set that example of wrecking guys for a win. And Kyle Busch was the ultimate professional. So 1,000% hats off to Kyle Busch and the way he's raced these last couple of races, because he could have he could have made it an ugly win last week, and he could have made it a little bit more of a contact sport this weekend at this Darlington race, and he chose to keep it clean. And I think that's huge for not only motorsports but for Kyle Busch's legacy moving forward too.
Yeah, so dare I say, hopefully we learned something from the RCR incident in Richmond. But Kyle, like you said, and Kyle flat out said the statement, "I'm not going to wreck them to win."
Right.
Flat out. And I will say though, Briscoe's probably going to argue he had to catch me first.
Yeah,
Could,
absolutely. Chris was fast, man. Or I'm sorry, Chase was fast.
Yeah, yeah. Now I will say, Briscoe was earning those Darlington stripes while Busch was putting the pressure on him.
Yes, sir.
Because Briscoe did brush the wall once or twice in those last couple laps, but again, the cushion, he had enough of a lead to where I feel like, and we've seen in the past the Goodyear tires, especially on a track where they do have fall off like a Darlington, that if you get on them too much, like you had just mentioned, the tires will kind of like equalize and
Right.
you lose a little bit of that advantage. Now, again, if we had a couple more laps in this race, I think it would have maybe been a bit of a different outcome. Busch might have had time to get to Briscoe's rear bumper, but it was shout out to the 14 crew. So
They ran a great race, man. They really did.
And just insane that the last 2 weeks we've seen two different winners, which made two different playoff spots, ultimately changing that bubble. Knocking Chris Buescher out of the postseason. The guys who did make the cut were Truex barely, and Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs is also making the postseason, and quietly again consistent.
Yep.
Ty in the regular season points, Ty Gibbs was 10th in points coming into this week. So consistency matters. He had enough of a cushion overcome any potential mishaps that could occur in this race. But yeah, he's in the postseason and competing for a championship. With the rest of the Joe Gibbs Racing drivers. So,
that's right. Absolutely.
They just barely get all four of them into the postseason though. So
inch a mile, my friend. Inch a mile.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all that matters is that you make it. So, right. It's really was a fun race. It really got exciting and interesting at the end of this race, and now we have playoffs to discuss because everybody gets to hit the reset button.
Yes, sir.
It is a 10 race sprint to Phoenix. I should say 9 race sprint because Phoenix is that 10th race. So it's a 9 race sprint to Phoenix, where we see how the round of 16 plays out and go from there because we have some drivers where after this upcoming week's race could be on the outside looking in, where they may be safe marginally this week heading into the next race. It's just it's an unknown unless you're a guy named Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and Tyler Reddick, because they have the biggest points cushion coming,
right?
Yeah, coming into this weekend. But even they could have, one bad race and it changes everything. So
let's talk about that real quick because we're going into Atlanta and Atlanta being the wild card that it's presented itself the last 2.5 seasons. Now we're going into our third full season with Atlanta races. It's not forgiving, and it will take names just as easy as a Daytona or a Talladega race. Kyle
Absolutely.
Larson, of course, we know he runs well everywhere. There's no getting around that. But if he finds himself in a situation where he ends up in the late 30s as a final position, that 35-point lead can evaporate real quick. I mean, we're talking real quick. That goes for Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin. One bad Atlanta race this upcoming weekend, and that point cushion that you spent all season building up could evaporate like that. So nothing changes for these guys. They've all got to be good. They've got to be great. They've got to be consistent. They got to take care of these race cars, man.
And find a way to keep it clean, like you said. Now, I just want to have a flashback to Milwaukee. Now, I'm not talking about the Cup guys, but I'm talking about the trucks that just ran their first playoff race out in Milwaukee. and last weekend, and
Right.
the race winner was not a playoff driver. It was a first time race winner in Lane Riggs, and we could see that once again. We could, hey, let's keep the streak alive, and see potential. We could have a potential new winner on the season out in Atlanta
Right.
because of that plate track type presentation, where it is, it's more of a pack racing, even though packs may get a little bit more stretched at Atlanta than you see at a Talladega and a Daytona. It is still tight quarters, okay, and you can take nothing for granted. Uh, in Atlanta earlier this year, which Atlanta was what the
I think it was week
uh,
2.
week 2, yeah, second race of the season. We leave Daytona, we head down to Atlanta. Daniel Suarez wins the closest finish in NASCAR history, as we all know. Where you had mentioned the likes of Kyle Busch was also in that photo finish, but Daniel Suarez, ultimately the race winner, locked himself on week 2 into this postseason because of that race finish at Atlanta. Has
Correct.
not won a race since, but that win mattered. He locked himself in, and guess what? Just like in week 2, it matters in the first round of the playoffs as well, because if a championship contending driver, playoff driver, can happen to win this weekend, they advance to the next round of the postseason and get to, breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. But who's to say a non-playoff driver doesn't go out and win? Because we've
Very
seen it
possible.
the last 2 weeks, and it's a possibility. Who's to say that a Harrison Burton doesn't slide into Atlanta and take another plate win where Wood Brothers Racing shows up and is very competitive,
Absolutely.
on a plate race? Wouldn't that mix up the postseason? So, I mean, there's just so many unpredictables and so many ways that this race can go. And I look back to, the finish at Atlanta and how tight it really was. You have Blaney scored as P2 and Kyle Busch third, but I mean, literally it was by this much. I mean, so it's insane. Oh, and by the way, a guy named Austin Cindric was fourth in that race, and he is a playoff driver as well.
Correct.
So, um, the top five was Bubba Wallace. He's a plate racer. He's notoriously known for how well he is. Who's to say he doesn't go win this race? Now, I mean, that would probably really hurt, uh, you know, but also be so exciting at the same time for him because, ultimately they're going trophy hunting now at this point. It's 10 races they have to go win a race. That means a lot to those guys to go out and do that for their sponsors, their owner, like you had, you
Absolutely.
had mentioned Kyle Busch doing the same. But, there are drivers that are in this race this weekend that are, and teams that are good plate teams, drivers, etc. And so, like Daytona, there are just so many unknowns and unpredictability that's going to take place in this race. It's going to happen, Don. You're not going to see a driver like we saw this past weekend go out and lead 200 plus laps of this race. I just don't see that happening. If it does, I'm going to have a lot of questions the opposite way in our post race teardown, because I don't see that happening at all.
Right. It's a
But
lot less likely that somebody's going to dominate a race the way Kyle Larson was able to get out front and really just put a stranglehold on the entire evening. We really saw him struggle, like you said, with the tires as the race wore on, and he didn't take tires when other drivers did. That's when he ultimately lost control of the race and the regular season championship. So, it's
yeah,
those split second decisions that can make or break these guys. 1 or 2 points, whether it be to the good or the bad. So that's how close it really is each and every weekend, each and every pit stop, each and every caution. You got to be on top of your game every single moment, regardless of situation, regardless of scenario, regardless of the guys around you. Run your race, get your good finishes, but make sure you're capitalizing on every single point that you can.
yeah, absolutely. And again, you win this race, you breathe a sigh of relief because you advance to that next round of the postseason.
If you're in the
If you
playoffs.
if you are a playoff driver, exactly. So I mean, there's that. And we talk about the guys at the back, the 16th on up. Let's work our way up the postseason standings real quick, just so our listeners and race fans know, where their driver may fall into this mix. So again, just barely, and he's showing -1 playoff point at this point. The way it's charted out is Martin Truex Jr. And then right above him, his teammate and Ty Gibbs. They're actually tied, but the tiebreaker goes to Ty Gibbs, and I think that has to do with better average finish.
Correct.
And then
Which Ty
right
has
above,
shown himself very consistent, which is why he's in the playoffs without a win.
and then we start our winners. We had 14 different drivers who have won a race this year, not counting the 15th that's not allowed in the postseason, and that would be Austin Dillon.
Correct.
We have Harrison Burton, and he is in P14 in the standings. 13th is this week's race winner in Chase Briscoe.
And once again, congratulations to Chase Briscoe and that entire organization, that entire team. That's a huge, huge win. Absolutely. Amazing.
Yep, and just stepping up when it counts.
Right.
Bottom of the ninth, we need a run, and they delivered.
Right.
And we get into the top 12. We have Alex Bowman, who we saw win a race out at the Chicago Street Course. And then next man up in 11th was Daniel Suarez, who we just spoke of, won this race in the spring.
Yep.
So again, who's to say he's not a contender this weekend? Then we get out to the top 10 in Austin Cindric. He's a driver who I mentioned finished in the top 5 in this race in the spring. Is a good plate racer as well. He's a Daytona 500 champion,
and he's in great Ford equipment as well, just like the other Penske guys.
Absolutely. And speaking of Ford equipment, right above him is his Penske teammate and Joey Logano in ninth. Another Ford in eighth with the RFK driver of Brad Keselowski. Seventh is Chevrolet of Hendrick Motorsports, Chase Elliott, Atlanta Motor Speedway being his home track.
Where he's won before.
Yeah, the Dawsonville natives are looking to ring the siren, as they call it, this weekend. With Chase Elliott, they're hoping their guy gets a win. Sixth place, Denny Hamlin. Now, we would have seen him maybe a little bit higher in the seeding if it hadn't been for the penalty that he had faced with the whole TRD engine debacle. I'm not going to re-dive into that, but he's in sixth. The top 5 now, another Ford and Ryan Blaney. Then we get to fourth place, William Byron, our Daytona 500 winner. So we know he's a plate racer and can run well and win these races.
Absolutely.
And then we get into the top 3 who have arguably been guys we have seen up front and consistently. Now, your regular season, points winner is Tyler Reddick in third. And then you get to a guy who's second in the postseason standings. And I'll tell you what, if it weren't for bad luck, I feel like he'd have a lot more playoff points to work with, to be given Larson a tighter run for his money and Christopher Bell.
Right.
Christopher Bell seemingly had a couple of these races, and some of these teams can say the same, where, just whether it be a misfortune of their own doing or getting caught up in somebody else's mess where they had dominant pieces and just didn't work out and get the finish they wanted. Christopher Bell could have certainly had some more playoff points, but that's the beauty of the postseason. You take your cushion you have, you put your nose down, and you go grind forward. And with that goal in mind. And then first place right now, the guy who dominated this week didn't get the win. Is Young Money, Kyle Larson.
Young Money.
And Kyle is he's a series champion. The Hendrick guys in general, always a tough out. But he is one of those guys, if they get hot at the right time, that is a team that is going to be a problem in the postseason if you're not a 5 and Kyle Larson fan. So
absolutely.
It's just it's anybody's match now. And again, one bad finish this weekend could really put you playing from behind the 8 ball going into the next couple of races until the round of 12. So We'll really have to see how things shake down this weekend at Atlanta. Normally I give you the dark horse pick, and I give you the race winner, and I'm not sure if I want to do that. I think I want to give you a hot take instead, Don.
Let me have it, man.
And I might have to fall on the sword for this, but I looked deep into stats and last year's postseason and how things shook out and played out and all those things. And if it wasn't for a dominant performance here, the inconsistencies that Hendrick Motorsports actually had in the postseason last year, I'm gonna give you my pick for the championship for Don, and I'd love to hear yours as well. But I'm gonna go on a hot take and tell you right now that I'm not gonna have a Hendrick Motorsports driver in my championship four. I know.
So we're going hot,
I,
bold, ballsy. We're going all across the board, man.
I'm probably gonna get roasted for this.
Bring it on, man. We want to hear. We want to hear y'all.
I'm gonna catch the heat, but I have arguments into reasons to why I think that this could potentially play out, especially when we come into an Atlanta race that is right out of the gate an ultimate crapshoot. Then you have a road course at Watkins Glen, and then Bristol, which is also a crapshoot race. And as far as how you could get caught up in accidents and things of that manner. So a lot of unpredictability in the round of 16. And if it falls how things kind of did last year for some of these teams, some of these Hendrick cars, or it could be another team as well, could be in trouble. And, wins matter in the postseason as well. Again, you get that win, you could shut me right up, Hendrick guys. But, I just.
And they're capable of rattling off some wins. Let's call it what it is.
I see a championship four that does not have a Hendrick Chevy in it. And, I'm sorry for you Hendrick fans out there. And like I said, I'm willing to take some heat for that, but it's just not in my championship four. Here are the guys I like, though. Okay, so I'm going to give them to you, and no particular order. Okay, so we'll start with our championship four in no particular order. I'm going to give you Denny Hamlin. Okay, I think that this is a team that, again, if they can get it hot at the right time, Chris Gabehart, Denny Hamlin, really looking for that illustrious championship that has negated them. They seem to have done everything else together in this sport except that. Can this be the year that Denny closes on that? I at least think he's going to get that opportunity in Phoenix. Okay.
All right.
Another driver that is a former champion of the sport, unlike Denny Hamlin, is a former champion of the sport, but this time he's an owner driver in the sport. And I really there's something about Brad Keselowski and the things that I've seen out of RFK Racing this year that lead me to believe that he can be there come Phoenix. I believe that there are tracks in the playoffs that suit his driving style. And I believe that this team has been good enough, fast enough, consistent enough to be there come Phoenix time. You're going to have a hard time arguing me otherwise. So I have the 6 car in my championship four. And then my final two are 2 guys that are in that top 3 in points right now that have just been bad, fast Toyotas all season long. And again, if either of these 2 guys continue their hot streaks and consistency, they're going to be tough outs. And like I said, I'm giving this to you in no particular order. But we have the 20 car of Christopher Bell. And then we have the 45 of Tyler Reddick, our regular season champion. Bell is a winner in this sport. He knows how to win. Reddick knows how to win. They both can get it done and get themselves through to the final 4 here. So again, recap: Hamlin, Bell, Reddick, Keselowski.
Championship 4, man.
Listeners, bring it. I want to know who your championship 4 is.
I like
I
it.
want to know.
I
mean, if you want to wait a week and give me yours next week, Don, I'll let you think about it. I'll give you the Atlanta as a cheat. I don't care. But listeners, I want to know what you think. come bring the fire, man. I'm all for it because
Absolutely.
I think that there's valid arguments for all four of those to be there.
Absolutely. And I know we're cutting it really close on our time for this episode. Man, we blistered through this just the way the regular season went by so fast. I'll go ahead and save my championship for next episode.
All right,
But I
love it.
do
Then
want to give you
give me a winner. Give me a
I'll,
winner then.
I'll give you a couple picks for my Atlanta. I really looking for the Penske guys to do something special this weekend. Ryan Blaney, I know he gets hot at the right time at the end of the year. And we already know what he's capable of accomplishing at Atlanta and racing for a win earlier this season. So if I had to pick a winner for Atlanta, the first race of the first round of the Cup playoffs, give me the 12 car in the Penske garage for the win. If I had to dark horse a win, and not necessarily a dark horse because they have earned their spot in the championship playoffs for the 2024 season, William Byron has been extremely quiet this season. This back half of the regular season. Very, very quiet. Showed tremendous speed at Darlington today. I think they're building a little bit more momentum that they had at the beginning of the season with their Daytona win, with their COTA victory. Look for William Byron to be making a lot of noise by the time the end of this Atlanta race starts to wrap up. Yeah, we're cutting it real short on time. Ryan, I have chills right now just thinking about what NASCAR is going through and heading into the playoffs and what we're going through the last couple months together with you and Nathan and the journey that we're on. This has just been so much fun, bro. And now we get to go into our first playoffs together as a group, as brothers, and with our channel Side Draft Media. So this is a really exciting time. Something else, I want to reach out to our listeners and our followers. Get your booties in the comments. We want to know who your championship 4 is. We want to know who your weekly winner is. We want to talk about it with you guys. This is all exciting stuff that we've kicked off together, but now we want more from our fans. We want to know who you love. We want to know, do you have a dark horse? Maybe it's not necessarily your guy that you think is going to win, but maybe somebody that you think is going to sneak and steal one of these wins from these championship contenders. We want to hear about it. We want to talk about it, and we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
But man, cheers to a wonderful regular season. Cheers to the playoffs coming up here next week at Atlanta. It's exciting, man. Ryan, do you have anything else for our viewers, our listeners, man?
No, the only thing I can say is thank you to everybody who continues to support this page. We do have something special in the works this week. So after you watch this episode, be on the look for something else dropping. But no, like, subscribe, share. That's all we can ask from you guys, and just thank you for your support.
Absolutely.
It means the world to us. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well said, Ryan, from everybody here at Side Draft Media, our executive producer, Nathan, who's not on screen, but he's always with us in spirit. Ryan, my co-host, always doing excellent work. I'm backwards still. He's on this side. Myself, Don. Thank you, everyone. Hey, happy playoffs, y'all.